All right. So a real estate contract to be enforceable must be, is it A, contain a legal description of the property, B, be written on a form approved by the State Bar Association, C, be acknowledged by three witnesses, be acknowledged by three witnesses, or D, be recorded within 3 days to be enforceable. I'm going to get rid of this one. You don't get rid of that one. That's the one I'm gonna get rid of.
Get rid of C.
Zoom this in a little bit. Okay. I'll get rid of C as well. Acknowledged by three witnesses. I agree. Now, where is my, hold up. I'm gonna have to go back out. Yeah, because I don't have that up there. Okay. Right. So I agree. So reading the question again, a real estate sales contract to be enforceable must, is it A, contain a legal description, or D, be recorded within 3 days to be enforceable?
Is it A?
Who said that?
Anthony.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. That it has to of these answers. And remember, when y'all taking a test, you just got to pick the best answer. It don't necessarily always got to be what you know, but from what you know, which one of those are the best answer? You know what I'm saying? So go ahead and read this. I got to turn something off here. Read that one and then pick the first one to eliminate. All right, okay. Which one we going? What does it say? How much time does a seller have to accept a buyer's offer? Good question. Now, this is not definition. This is going to be application or this is something that actually has to do with practice in real estate, but it's about contracts. How much time does a seller have to accept a buyer's offer? Is it A, 48 hours from the time of the offeror's signature of the offer? B, 24 hours from the time of the offer's delivery to the seller? C, within 24 hours following the stated expiration? Or D, a reasonable time or until expired date on the offer? Let me get rid of C. All right. Somebody else get rid of one.
I'm gonna get rid of B.
I like. Okay, cool. All right, so reading the question again. How much time does a seller have to accept a buyer's offer? A, 48 hours from the offer's assigning of the offer. D, a reasonable time or until the expiration date on the offer. Which one?
I think it's D.
D. Okay, yes, I think it's D too. And so the thing that you got to think about with this is two part. You know that is not necessarily the right answer if the contract calls for something different. If the contract doesn't spell out dates or like expiration dates or when something has to be performed, it can be left open for interpretation for the court. So in this instance, a reasonable time, or if there is an actual expiration date in the offer, that is going to be the deadline. But typically, if it's not written in the contract, it's going to be a reasonable time, and that's going to be left up to the courts. What's a reasonable time to accept an offer? Is it 1 week? Is it 2 days? Is it 3 days? Is it 2 weeks? So in this game, and now this is going to just be when you're practicing. Typically, when you get an offer, you want to communicate to the buyer's agent that you receive the offer, the seller's looking at it. Now, it might be a hot property. You can tell them like, hey, the seller's going to collect the offers, look at it, and make the decision. If another offer comes in, I'll let you know that we're in multiple offer situation. And at that point, we'll be asking for your highest and best offer so we can determine which one we want to go with. But if there's the key to this is the first thing to remember is that if the contract does not call for it, it's left up to interpretation. And typically what they depart to is a reasonable time. All right. Or now if there's an expiration date, then obviously that's going to trump everything. All right. Next one. This is a good one right here. A buyer submits an offer to a seller and then dies in a car accident. Before learning the buyer's death, the seller accepts the offer. Which of the following is true? Is it A, the seller can force the buyer's estate to go through with the purchase? B, the death of the buyer, the buyer's death terminates the offer. C, the seller must make a new offer with the same terms to the buyer's heirs. Or is it D, the buyer's heirs must have the option of enforcing the contract? I'm going to get rid of C. Now, here on this one, what are they testing right here? Well, they're testing if you know what terminates an offer. So I'm going to type that up here. And that's kind of how we got to think when we read this question. What are they asking us? They're trying to see if we know what terminates. Do we know what terminates an offer? Right? That's what you need to think with that question. And if you could get to that point when you're studying, like, hey, they asking me if what terminates an offer, and I remember, this or that, so that's what they're testing here. So we need to get rid of one more, and then we can answer the question.
We can get rid of D.
Okay. I like that. So that leaves us A and B. Reading the question again, a buyer submits an offer to a seller. Now, at this point, I really feel as though, based on what we eliminated, that we know the answer to this question. And if we remember to eliminate the bad answers, no matter how confident we are, it's only 80 questions. What did they give you? 2 hours to take the test?
Mm-hmm.
So if it's 80 questions, hell, that's almost 2 minutes a question, a minute and a half a question. So take your time. Even if you know the answer, don't sit up there thinking you're sweet and you're getting it, because we need to get the low-hanging fruit. And to me, if you know what terminates an offer, this is low-hanging fruit, especially when we know the answer. So right now at this point, what I'm doing with number 4 is I'm making sure that they're not trying to trick me. So I'm gonna read the question slow again. The buyer submits an offer to a seller and then dies in a car accident. Okay. Before learning of the buyer's death, the seller accepts the offer. Which of the following is true? Okay, that's pretty straight and clear. I kind of know where we want to go with this. Is it A, the seller can force the buyer's estate to go through with the purchase? Or B, the buyer's death terminated the offer?
B.
B.
Somebody who said B whispered it.
B. B.
All right, I'm going to go with B with y'all too on that one. Yeah, that death terminates the offer. All right. The death terminates the offer. All right. Next question. Which of the following contracts can be assigned to another party? Here, what they're trying to test you on is if you know the difference between a contract that can be assignable and one that can't be assignable. Yesterday, we said service contracts cannot be assignable. So that rules out listings, if I got in a contract with you to cut your grass, anything that provides a service is not assignable. So anything that has to do with you selling a house or you performing a service like cutting grass or doing landscaping, those are service agreements. Those cannot be assigned. Okay. So that when you hear assignment, you should know service agreements are not assignable because that's probably the only type of agreement that they're going to throw in there to throw you off. So how you determine if it's a service agreement, you just read the answer. Is it exclusive listing agreement a service agreement? Well, we just said listings are not assignable because when you list someone's property, you're telling them I'm going to provide a service. That service is that I'm going to sell your house. So that's a service agreement. So that's the one I'm going to get rid of right off the top, and I'll read the other three. I'm getting rid of a listing agreement. All right. Is it a personal service agreement? Is it C, a contract for sale of undeveloped land? Or is it D, an employment contract between a broker and a salesperson? So we need to get rid of one more.
Get rid of B.
All right. Let's read the question again. Which of the following contracts can be assigned to another party? C, a contract for the sale of undeveloped land, or D, an employment contract between a broker and a salesperson?
I'm gonna say C.
And that's correct. That's correct. Because the other type of contract that I didn't even say that's not assignable is an employment contract. You can't assign this contract to a new broker. The salesperson might not want to go. So it's going to be, that's what they're testing. They're testing to see if you know what are the stipulations of assigning a contract. The other key thing that you need to know about assigned contracts, and this is contract law, is that if the contract does not call for it to be assignable, then it could be presumed that it is not assignable, or it could be presumed that it is assignable. If you don't want your contracts to be assigned to another party, because it does complicate the process, then you have to put that in the contract. Seller will not allow contract to be assigned after acceptance. That's it. You can put that on the MLS. You can put that in the contract. And actually, if you have it on the MLS, you should also put it in the contract as well. All right. And you want to make sure that your seller's okay with that. And you probably want to throw that in a listing agreement. Seller requests this contract not to be assigned after acceptance. Put that in there. That had them sign that. All right. The next question. This probably is a definition question as soon as I see an implied agency. An implied agency relationship may be deemed to exist if. Now, we just got to know the definition of applied agency. Is it A, the parties do not disavow or express that contract has expired? B, the parties act as if there is a contract? Is it C, an offering party does not receive written notice that the offer has been rejected? Is it D, the parties promise to perform their part of the agreement if the other party performs? I am going to get rid of A because I don't know what the hell they're talking about with that one. So I'm just going to get rid of it for real. All right.
Get rid of B.
All right. So now this is a definition question. The question is do we know what an implied contract is? If you do not know the answer to this question, write implied contract down, go study it, write the definition like 20 times. And they will never be able to ask me a question about an implied contract on the test and not know it. Because at this point in time in contracts, we should know what an implied contract is just through your independent study and everything that we went through in class. So reading the question again. An implied agency relationship an implied agency relationship may be deemed to exist if, is it C, an offering party does not receive written notice that the offer has been rejected? D, the parties promise to perform their part of the agreement if the others perform. Now we got a problem here. All right, because here I'm going to just tell you, we what we did was We crossed out the right answer. Now, right answer is B, because I want y'all to know this. When you hear implied, you got to think of the main keyword of action. It's the actions. Because what type of contracts do we have? We have express contracts, and we have, which are explicit and written contracts, and then we have ones that are not, or implied contracts. An implied contract is through our actions, and it's not written, right? So the parties act as if there was a contract. That's the right
That question.
that was the right answer, right? Remember, implied. So I'm gonna give you an example of an explicit, and because this is one of the things, like, I don't want to get too nerdy with y'all, but this is one of the things that is really at play right now in our society, is that people are very poor in determining, like, implied things that are not obvious, things that are not written. And what I mean by that is that when you hear implicit or implied, that means that it's not, like, obvious, right? It's like, in this instance, it's through the actions. Explicit is this here. When you go to the store and you pick up a pair of jeans and you look at the price tag, and the price tag say $100, that's an explicit. You know exactly how much those jeans cost, right? Implied is like, you go pick them up and you don't know. It's not, you're not sure. In the section that says 70% off or whatever. So there's an implication that them things might be 70% off. There's nothing obvious or written down or explicit, right? And so in this question, the key thing, not to get too technical, when you hear implied, it's not obvious. It's through the actions. It's kind of like you were acting like my agent. You never told me explicitly that you were my agent. So the key word to look for when you hear implied contract or implied agency is act or actions. Okay. So that's that one. And so write that down, and just study it. And then, I mean, because there's only two types of contract. There's written contracts and contracts that are formed through your actions. Right. Now, the contracts formed through your actions, they might have a problem being enforceable because they're not written. All right. But just think that when you hear implied, think when you hear implied anything, think based on my actions or an act between the parties. All right, excuse me, this is probably an definition question. Which of the following is an executory contract? We got to get this. We got to get all the definition questions, period. So that was a definition question. We erred on that one a little bit there. But which of the following is executory contract? An expired lease, a sale contract before closing, a recorded sale contract, an option to buy after it is exercised. All right. So I am going to get rid of this one. So you ladies get rid of one more.
A.
All right. Okay. And so it says, which of the following is an executory contract? Is it B, a sales contract before closing, or C, a recorded sales contract? This is a definition question. Anybody can answer it.
Um,
Is it B?
Yes. This would be called an executed contract because there's nothing else left to perform. Remember, executory contract is a sales contract before closing or a contract in which the parties still have something to perform. They still have duties and obligations from the contract, and that is not done. So an executory contract is one that is not completed by the parties involved in the contract. So the answer to this one is B. a contract before closing. All right. Now, an option after an option to buy after it's exercised, we know an option is a unilateral contract at first that turns into a bilateral contract once the buyer exercises their option to buy it. So they say, yeah, I want to buy it. So once they say, yeah, I want to buy it, then that becomes a bilateral contract, which is the next question. This is a definition question. And these are the questions that we got to get. We have to get these. Like we got to get the definition questions. Because these are the most objective questions that don't have to do with math that we gonna deal with. Math is all objective. There's only one answer, and that's the right answer. Ain't no subjectivity in that, right? A bilateral contract is one in which A, both parties promise to do something in exchange for the other party's performance. B, both parties receive equal consideration. C, two parties agree to perform a service together. D, both parties promise to do something if the other party performs first. If the other party performs first, I'm going to get rid of that one. We need to get rid of one more. Get rid of. We need to get rid of one more. Anybody?
B. Get rid of B.
Get rid of B.
Okay. So we got rid of B. I happen to agree with that. So a bilateral contract is one in which both parties promise to do something in exchange for the other party's performance. Or C, two parties agree to perform a service together.
It's A.
All right. Moving to the next one. A home seller signs a listing agreement, which is a service agreement, with a broker, then subsequently revokes the listing. Which of the following is true? Again, a seller signs a listing agreement with a broker, then subsequently revokes the listing. Take it away. She don't want to sell it anymore. Which of the following is true? A, the seller continues to have a contractual relationship obligations to the broker. B, contract remains in full force until the expiration date. And C, the broker may have a claim for marketing expenses expended during the term of the listing. D, the seller cannot sign a listing agreement with another broker. So I am going to say, I'm going to get rid of this one. This is a good question. It's technical too. So if you know the answer to this one, you're doing pretty good on this. Again, the question says a home seller signs a listing agreement with a broker and subsequently revokes the listing. Which of the following is true? The one thing too is that they don't say how long after the listing was signed that they revoked it, but just presume that you just don't know that. So anything is open to interpretation on that. So we still got the contract remains in full force until the expiration date. The broker may have a claim for marketing expenses expended during the listing term. And D, the seller cannot sign a listing agreement with another broker. Let's get rid of one more.
Get rid of B, maybe?
I like that because this one eliminates this one to me. These are almost the same thing. The contract remains in full force until the expiration date. The seller continues to have contractual extra. If we got rid of that one, we can get rid of this one too. Both of those can't be right. All right. So now a seller signs a listing agreement with a broker, then subsequently revokes the listing. Which of the following is true? Is it C? The broker may have a claim for marketing expenses expended during the listing term, or D, the seller cannot sign a listing agreement with another broker.
I think the answer is C.
I believe it's C.
Yeah, I agree. Here's the thing. If the listing, now, another thing, there's a caveat to this. If the listing agreement spelled that out in the agreement between, so this is, let's just think in real life how this would work out. Kiana, you selling your house. Antonise comes to your house and y'all talk about selling it and you sign up with Antonise. Boom. Remember, listing agreements are very canned. They have the exact same, they just have the necessary information in there. And but then say for instance, Keanu, you say, hey, I need to sell this thing fast. What's your marketing strategy? Then Anthony says, hey, my marketing strategy is, I typically use about $1,000 of my own money to sell a house and I market it and this, and that. And because I know I'm going to get a commission back. And the seller says, oh, okay, I like that. And so if you leave that up in the air and it's not in the listing agreement, then you stand a chance to lose out on that money if they pull the listing from you. So what you probably want to put into the listing agreement is that buyer and agent agree that $1,000 would be expended during the listing term. If the listing is revoked or is terminated due to the seller's action and not cause meaning that you did something incorrect, seller is to refund the agent the monies for the marketing expense. If you don't put that in there or something like that in there, and that's probably something that you want to run by your broker to see what type of language they want you to put in the contract if that's what you're doing. But yeah, if you did that and the seller pulled it out and that was the agreement, then you could go after them for marketing expenses expended during the listing term. All right. All right, here's another definition question. We need to know what a breach of contract is. What is a breach of contract? Is it a termination of a contract by mutual consent of the parties? B, financial damage suffered by a party because another party has nullified the contract provision? Is it C, a lawsuit to force a party to discharge the contract? Or D, the failure of a party to perform according to the terms of the contract? I'm going to get rid of B, the longest answer. All right. We need to get rid of one more. Yeah, what is a breach?
Perform something under contract.
Which one y'all want to get rid of?
I said to get rid of A.
Get rid of A? Yeah, that's called a mutual agreement, what A is. The termination of a contract by mutual consent of the parties and mutual agreement to release the contract. All right, so a breach of contract is a lawsuit to force a party to discharge the contract, or D, the failure of a party to perform according to the terms of the contract.
So it would be D.
D.
I agree. That's the definition. And like, if you want to, add this to your definition, then that's a good way. That's exactly what a breach is. One of the parties didn't perform what they said they were going to do. All right. Next, this is a definition question. What is rescission? Is it A, the act of withdrawing an offer before it has been accepted? B, the act of declaring that a contract is no longer in effect for a given party? Is it C, the act of declaring the contract unenforceable? Or is it D, the act of modifying the terms of a contract? I'm going to get rid of D.
Get rid of, I only heard it. I think it was C, something about declaring the contract not forcible, enforceable or something like that.
So I said, what is rescission? The act of withdrawing an offer before it's been accepted. The act of declaring a contract is no longer in effect for a given party. The act of declaring a contract unenforceable. We need to get rid of one of those.
Yeah, I think you can get rid of C.
All right, get rid of C. Okay, cool. I agree. So that leaves what is rescission? The act of withdrawing an offer before it has been accepted. The act of declaring that a contract is no longer in effect for a given party. Which one of those is the best answer? If you had 55 points and this was question number 80, which one will we choose?
I think I would choose A.
All right, anybody disagree? If those were the two answers I was left with, I'm choosing A2. Now, if it's not A, we're going to remember and read the question to help us, like we're gonna read the answer in the question to help us remember what rescission is, because to me that's what rescission is, but revoking the offer could be that too. So we'll see. To be valid. All right, a valid contract must. In this one, we're gonna put that here. Think about the four what makes a contract valid? What are the four things? All right, and let me highlight that. So to be valid, a contract must, is it A, reflect a mutual understanding or agreement? B, use precise wording in a document? C, not be executable? B, be created only by an attorney? I'm gonna get rid of C and then go back up so y'all can see the others. All right, that's the best I can do to get everything on the same screen. Again, to be valid, a valid contract must, we got to get rid of one more. A, go ahead.
I was gonna say get rid of B.
B,
B. Mm-hmm.
I agree. And that leaves us to be valid, a contract must A, reflect a mutual understanding or agreement, or B, be created only by an attorney.
A.
It gotta be A, because hell, what are we doing? If it was D, then we wouldn't even be sitting here. Unless this was law school. All right, I agree with that. 13. Two parties enter into a contract. The agreement fulfills all requirements for a valid contract. Without disqualifying circumstances, given the situation, is it possible? I'm sorry. Two parties, and let's read this again. Two parties enter into a contract. That's what we need. The agreement fulfills all the requirements for a valid contract with no disqualifying circumstances. Given the situation, is it still possible that the contract may be A, void, B, illegal, C, unenforceable, D, voidable? This is a great question. This make you think right here. And it's not hard if you know exactly where to think.
Well, we could get rid of
Oh, let me get rid of one. I'm sorry. Let me get rid of illegal. I'm gonna get rid of an easy one. So y'all can't choose that one. That's too easy. We got to get rid of that one. So that leaves
also
A.
get rid of A.
Get rid of A. Okay. Now that's a great elimination, because it says two parties in a contract. The agreement fulfills all the contracts for a valid contract. So as soon as it does that, we know it's not void.
Mhm.
Period. Right? With no disqualifying circumstances, given the situation, it is still possible that the contract may be, is it unenforceable or voidable?
B,
C or D?
I say D.
Okay. Somebody said C.
I did.
Okay. So yesterday we had this issue come up twice. Kiana had conviction first, and then the second time it was you, Anthony's. So here, let me do this too.
And look, I'm gonna put a disclaimer. I'm not reading
So,
it or looking at it. I'm just listening to the options you gave.
so that mean that's definitely the answer then, you know? So you want to defer to Kiana's answer, or you want to take it? Or Kiana, or vice versa?
I don't know. Read the question one more time for me, please.
Two parties enter into a contract. The agreement fulfills all requirements for a valid contract. So we got all the four tenets with no disqualifying circumstances. Given the situation, it's still possible for the contract may be unenforceable or voidable.
I don't know. It could be
Well, you
because
said
they both
C.
are similar in definition. I don't know. I think I'm still rocking
It's
C.
okay. So you still go right. So you gonna go with C?
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Isn't it possible it could be either one?
No, not with these. It's only one of them is right. Because when I say what I'm gonna say, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, right.
I know, I know for voidable, if something, if there's like some type of discoveries after,
It's well, yeah, right. Any subsequent event.
right, it
So
can it can still
So
be voidable.
I'm thinking if everything is in place, there's nothing really wrong with it.
it's
Maybe it still cannot, something about it could not be enforced or something. I don't know.
no. Well, yeah. Obviously, you're saying that it's unenforceable. But what I want y'all to think about this here: can a verbal contract be valid? Yeah, but it can't be enforceable. So if that contract that they're saying, and then when they trick you, they say the agreement fulfills all requirements for a valid contract. Verbal contracts are valid, they're just not enforceable. So with no disqualifying circumstances, given the situation, the contract still can be unenforceable because it could be a verbal contract. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know. I haven't looked at the answers to these questions, but that's where I'm going with it because I know they're trying to trick me. Right? When you get down to something like this, you know they're trying to trick you. Because in a sense, Kiana, yeah, you're right. They both can be right. That's if you don't think about if they're voidable. I mean, if they're verbal.
Mm-hmm.
We know verbal contracts can be valid but unenforceable. We know written contracts can be valid but enforceable. We need something else to happen for it to be voidable. So if I'm at this question, and we see, you got to remember that verbal contract. See, if you, and hopefully this question is going to fill that hole, right? It's like Swiss cheese. You got to, we need a clean, shake, straight, no holes in our knowledge. And so hopefully this question, when you pose with something like this, you go through the steps. What is a valid contract? Okay, a valid contract is one that meets the four tenets: mutual assent, competent parties, consideration, legal purpose. Boom. Okay, we got a valid contract. Now what's next? We need the contract to be enforceable. Okay, the contract's going to be enforceable if it's in writing. If it's not enforceable, we can still have a valid contract, but then it's unenforceable, right? Now, we know that when we're in that position, the contract isn't void because we got all the tenants, right? The contract is valid And then the last thing that you're really gonna think about is did something else happen after the fact to make it voidable? And it's just nothing in here that's gonna make me pick voidable over unenforceable. I'm gonna just have to, if I know everything that I know, I'm picking unenforceable, right? Because you're torn. And most of the time when you're torn, here's what you want to do for the test. Regroup. Don't answer that question. Skip it. Because guess what? One of these answers down here may trigger you. At the end of the test, and on your sheet of paper, write it down. I might even write, it's just too long of a question to write the entire question down. But I'm going to write question 13, skip. And then at the end of the day, I'm going to go back. I might have 10 minutes left. They're going to go have you go. Because when you skip a question, you can skip a question on a test, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when you skip a question, they're going to come back up at the end. But what if that's question number 2 and you're torn already? Skip it, because in the extra 78 questions that you ask at your answer, something may trigger you to say, oh, now that question back there, that's the answer to that question. Right? It may fill the gap for you. So we're gonna go with unenforceable on this one. But that was a great question to help us kind of get over that dilemma of the answers in this question, because I can see how it'll be voidable, and hopefully when we answer them, it is unenforceable and it says what I say. But that's what I'm thinking. And if I'm thinking that in my head, I'm picking unenforceable. If I didn't think about that, I probably would have went with voidable. All right, the next question. The guardian of a mentally incompetent party enters into an oral contract with another party to buy a trade fixture on behalf of the incompetent party. This contract, A, does not meet contract validity. B, is possibly valid and enforceable. C, must be in writing to be valid. D, is valid but unenforceable. I am going to say get rid of this one, because we know contracts do not have to be in writing to be valid. Right? I'm getting rid of that one. So it says a guardian for a mentally incompetent party enters into an oral contract with another party to buy a trade fixture on behalf of the incompetent party. This contract, A, does not meet validity requirements. B, is possibly valid and enforceable. D, is valid but unenforceable. We need to get rid of one.
Which one did you get rid of?
I got rid of must be in writing to be valid. No, it don't have to be in writing to be valid. We know that. It can be valid, but it won't be enforceable if it's an oral contract. They're testing to know if you know what an oral contract is. And that's the key to this question. And I'm going to show you how we should be getting rid of, in this question, when you see this, we should be getting rid of A.
I was about to say.
Because here's the thing. It's possibly valid and enforceable. Is valid but unenforceable. Those are exact opposites. My thought about this test is they're not going to give you 2 easy questions for you to just get rid of, or answers to get rid of, because if like when they're that opposite, one of them is the answer. What do we know about valid contracts? They are valid, but they may not be enforceable because it's an oral contract. Now, the question is buying trade fixtures considered something that, and they confuse you with all this guardian and what it is that you have to determine if an oral contract, we know that an oral contract, what do we know about oral contracts? They can be valid, but they can't be enforced. Right? So on this one, I'm going to take this one. I'm going to go with D, because I want to see something. I think they're trying to trick us on this one. Because what I think is that they may say, are the trade fixtures enough let's just see. 14, we got that one. I took 14, so we'll remember that. We got 5 more, y'all. A prospective home buyer submits a signed offer with the condition that the seller pay for the inspection at closing. The seller disagrees, crosses out the provision, then signs and returns the document to the buyer. At this point, assuming all of the contract validity items are in order, the original offer is now A, an accepted offer, therefore a valid contract, B, an executable option, C, a counter offer, or D, an invalid offer. I'm going to get rid of this one, an accepted offer, therefore a valid contract. Again, a prospective buyer submits a signed offer with the condition that the seller pay for a home inspection at closing. The seller disagrees, crosses out the provision, then signs and returns the document to the buyer. At this point, assuming all of the contract validity items are in order, the original offer is now, is it B, an executable option, C, a counter offer, or D, an invalid offer? We have to get rid of one of those and then we can answer it.
Get rid of D, I think.
Get rid of D, an invalid offer, okay. Now, the remaining questions or answers is an executable option, a counter offer. A prospective home buyer signs an offer with the condition that the seller pay for an inspection at closing. The seller disagrees, crosses out the provision, then signs and returns the document to the buyer. At this point, assuming all of the contract validity items are in order, the original offer is now, is it an executable option or C, a counter offer? At this point, if those are my last 2 choices, I'm asking my damn self, how many times have I heard executable option? And if this is the 55th question and I need one more to pick, am I going to take that answer over a counter offer? That's really what it comes down to. When you get to this point, when you're in a question, think that boy is the 55th answer. You need one more to pass the test. Which hill you going to die on? Is it going to be on executable option or counter offer? We have not ever talked about it. We talked about an option, but we ain't talked about no executable option. So that's how, in this one, I'm breaking the tie. If I got to here, I'm not picking executable option. I just can't because we ain't talked about it. I ain't say write it down as a definition or nothing. But we did talk about counter offers, and I do know that this is contracts, right? And so with that, that's just how I'm thinking. The whole reason when you're taking this test, eliminate. Because I guarantee you all of y'all would pass the test if there were only 2 questions. If you took the test and it was A or B, every bad last one of y'all would have been past this test already. So let's try to get it down to A or B, and y'all are doing a great job at eliminating 2 of them to get us to A or B. Then read the question over again and just go with the one that, like I said, in this instance, I've never heard of executable option. Not nothing that in the whole time we've been in this class, I've never said those 3 words together.
I was thinking counter offer.
If we didn't know it, go with the one that at least you're familiar with, and don't be like, okay, well, I'm just gonna guess and just guess, So counter offer is the answer. Here's the thing. Here's the key to this question. The seller disagrees and crosses out the provision. Whenever there's a change made to an offer, that offer is terminated. And if the seller strikes out something and returns it to the buyer with their signature, that's a counter offer called a new offer. And now the buyer becomes the person who can accept that counter offer or decline the counter offer. All right. Next question. A construction contractor executes a contract with a buyer. In the agreement, the contractor promised to complete the construction by November 20th. This promise can be construed as an option, mutual consent, meeting of the minds, valuable consideration. This is a heavy one right here. I don't understand why they're trying to access this way. But let's read it again. A construction contractor executes a contract with a buyer. Buyer signed it, they signed it. Right? In the agreement, the contractor promises to complete construction by November 20th. This promise can be construed as an option, mutual consent, meeting of the minds, valuable consideration. All right. Well, I'm going to get rid of valuable consideration. Actually, no, I'm not going to get rid of that one because I think there's a key in there to make me gonna keep that one at least. I'm going to get rid of option. All right. Again, a construction contractor. Now, this is one where we got to think. So this is application. This is not a definition question. A construction contractor executes a contract with a buyer. In the agreement, the contractor promises to complete construction by November 20th. This promise can be construed as mutual consent, meeting of the minds, valuable consideration. Now, what is the definition of mutual consent? What is mutual consent?
Both parties agree.
Or offer and what?
Offer and
Acceptance.
acceptance.
Right. So what is meeting of the minds?
Isn't that the same thing?
It's the same thing.
That's why I'm like, ain't them two the same thing?
Them two are the same thing. So they if we know what mutual consent is, we know that that's the meeting of the minds, which is the most important tenet in contract validity, in my opinion, and then that the book points that out too. So we can get rid of both of these because they're the same thing. It has to be consideration because it says promises too much. I know that consideration can be promises or something of value. The value is that they're going to finish on November 20th, and the value is going to come through the contractor's work. So it has to be valuable consideration. All right. We got three more. A seller, no, 4, 17, 18, 19, and 20. A seller contracts to sell a property that she does not own. The sale contract for this transaction is A, executable, B, must be in writing, C, void, D, illegal yet potentially enforceable. I'm going to get rid of must be in writing. Again, a seller contracts to sell a property that she does not own. The sale for this contract, the sale contract for this transaction is it executable, void, or illegal, yet potentially enforceable? We need to get rid of one more.
Get rid of A.
Good job. A seller contracts to sell a property that she does not own. The sales contract for this transaction is a void or illegal yet potentially enforceable.
So would it be void?
I'm going to highlight that as the answer. I want to talk to you all about this one, though, because the answer is giving you hints. It is illegal yet potentially enforceable. Well, what is one of the tenets of a valid contract? Legal purpose.
Mm-hmm.
If we can't contract for something illegal, you don't have the authority to sell it. So it's never a contract. It has to be void. And to tell you the truth, if I get down to here, yet illegal but potentially enforceable, you can't enforce something that's illegal. So I got to pick void. I got to. And I'll be surprised if we get to the back of the book and it says something different. All right, 18, the statute of limitations. We haven't talked about the statute of limitations. Requires that a party to a contract who had been damaged or who questions the contract provisions All right. The statute of limitation requires that parties to a contract who have been damaged or who question the contract provisions. All right, I get it now. So they're saying the statute of limitation requires that a party to a contract who has been damaged, the person that's been wronged in the contract, or who question the contract's provisions, or I got questions about it, like I'm not sure um, um, about that. Is it A, must act within the statutory period? B, must select a specific limited course of action for recouping their losses? C, must arbitrate prior to taking the court action, go through an arbiter, somebody that the parties would select to be the arbiter of the issue. It's not a court official. Typically, it's appointed by some type of association, like the Board of Realtors would probably, or ACAR, if it happened in real estate up here, would be the one to appoint an arbiter. Or is it D, must wait a statutory period before they may take legal action? All right. It says the statute of limitations requires that parties to a contract who have been damaged or who questions the contract provisions is it A, act within a statutory period, B, must select specific limited course of action for recouping their losses, C, must arbitrate prior to taking court, D, must wait a statutory period before they take a legal action. I'm going to get rid of C. We haven't talked about this. You're not going to get this on a test, but we can answer this one. So get rid of one more. And then we got two more to answer. Get rid of one. Statute of limitations requires that parties to a contract who have been damaged or who questions the contract provisions must act within a statutory period, must select a specific limited course of action for recouping their losses, or D, must wait a statutory period before taking the legal before they may take legal action. We need to get rid of.
Get rid of D.
All right. And so that leaves us, and reading the question again, the statute of limitations requires that parties to a contract who have been damaged or who question the contract's provisions must act within the statutory period, or B, must select a specific limited course of action for recouping their losses. What do y'all think?
B.
You think it is B?
I'm not sure which one it is, but looking
That's
at it,
okay, because we
I
haven't.
would go for B.
All right. So in this one, statute of limitations, let's just Google that definition. It's gonna be A. You gotta, that's a time. You ever heard of like the statute of limitations for crimes is 7 years or 20 years, or like there's no statute of limitations for murder? So let's act within the statutory period, but let's just go Google what the definition of statute of limitations is. And this is what you do when you get a question like that you come across, we haven't covered it, you just Google it. Statute of limitations is a limited time in which a civil or criminal case can be brought to legal proceedings. All right. So in this question, going back there, it says the statute of limitations requires that parties to a contract who have been damaged or who questions the contract provisions must act within the statutory period. All right. So we're going to go with that one. That's okay. All right. Got two more. Statute of frauds question. The purpose of the statute of frauds is it A, and this is a definition question, invalidate certain oral contracts, B, require certain conveyance-related contracts to be in writing. C, nullify oral leases and listing agreements. D, eliminate fraud in real estate contracts. The purpose of the statute of fraud is it A, to invalidate certain oral contracts. B, require certain conveyance-related contracts be in writing. C, nullify oral leases or listing agreements. D, eliminate fraud in real estate contracts. I'm gonna get rid of C. We need to get rid of one more.
For the A.
All right, invalidate certain oral contracts. I agree with that elimination. So reading the question again, the statute of frauds. The purpose of the statute of frauds is it B, require certain conveyance-related contracts to be in writing, or D, eliminate fraud in real estate contracts. What is the purpose of statute of frauds?
D.
D or B?
I say
Boy,
D.
boy or dog?
Dog.
Okay. D. All right, I agree. And the last question. A seller immediately accepts a buyer's offer but waits 10 days before returning the accepted documents to the buyer. Meanwhile, the offer has expired. Which of the following is true? A, the buyer is bound to the contract since it was accepted immediately. B, the buyer has no obligations to the seller whatsoever. C, the buyer may not rescind the expired offer. Or D, the seller may sue for specific performance. Again, reading the question. The seller immediately accepts the buyer's offer but waits 10 days before returning the offer, returning the accepted documents to the buyer. Meanwhile, the offer has expired. Which of the following is true? And here's the thing: I don't put expiration dates in the offer. Like, I'm not gonna put them in the offer. I just don't do it because if the seller does want to accept it, then now because like somebody had sent me an offer, like I got a client out in California, they never respond. It take 3 days for them to accept an offer, right? They are big in agriculture and that's their main business. They own like 3,600 properties nationwide, and so I'm selling their Ohio portfolio, and so they don't answer questions. They got bigger fish to fry, even though their portfolio is worth millions. That's not their breadwinner. So they don't get back to me for 3-4 days. What I do to anticipate what's going to happen is in the MLS, I'll say, something like the seller is slow to respond. Please do not put any expirations in the offer due to this, or something like that in the broker remarks. Then that'll address that. Or you could just say the seller's slow to respond. You don't need to have to control what they put in the offer because their client may require that they put that in the offer, and they're always to protect the interests of your client. So you put one in there, but you still can put one in there, but just put something like, "Hey, the seller's slow to respond. We'll get back to you as soon as possible," in the broker remarks or something like that. And so, last question. It says a seller immediately accepts an offer but waits 10 days before returning the accepted document to the buyer. Meanwhile, the offer has expired. Which of the following is true? I'm going to get rid of one. The buyer is bound to the contract since it was immediately accepted. So this is also what we got to think about with this too, is the delivery, right? Delivery of the offer constitutes exception, not the signing of the offer. All right. Is it B, the buyer has no obligations under the seller whatsoever? C, the buyer may not rescind the expired offer? Or D, the seller may sue for specific performance? We need to get rid of one more. Get rid of one more of those.
I think get rid of D maybe.
I agree.
Yep, I agree with that. All right, so that's going to leave us B and C. The buyer has no obligations to the seller whatsoever. The buyer may not rescind the expired offer. Those are two opposite. One of those got to be the answer because they're exactly opposite. The buyer has no obligations. The buyer can't rescind, which means they have obligations. So in that one, either we do think they have obligations or we don't, really is what it boils down to. Do they have obligations or don't they? That's really what it is.
They don't.
All right. So that would be B. And I agree. All right. So the last thing to do is to check these answers. We're going to go back up to the top. All right. And I'm going to be switching screens. So number one was valuable consideration necessary to make a contract valid. Must be. We picked C for that one. Let's see what the answer is. Which one was that? Right here. It is C. Something of value traded in exchange for something of value. A contract must contain a two-way exchange of valuable consideration as compensation for performance by another party. The contract is not valid or enforceable if one party provides consideration. Valuable consideration may be something tangible of tangible value, such as money, or something the party promises to do. It may also be something intangible that the party must give up. All right. All right. So we see that the next question is A. That's A, so we can kind of go back and forth to make this quicker. Number two, it says the real estate sales contract to be enforceable must be A, we got that one right, contain a legal description of the property. Going back to the book, and hopefully y'all can see this. We said A, contain a legal description. In addition to satisfying the requirements of a valid contract in general, the contract that conveys an interest in real estate must be in writing, contain legal description of the property, and be signed by one or more of the parties. All right. 3, we said, is D, reasonable time until the expiration date on the offer. Now, remember, we got that one right. We talked about that one. All right, so 3 was, how much time does a seller have to accept an offer? We said a reasonable time until the expiration date of the offer. Going back here, it says, if an offer contains an expiration date and the phrase time is of the essence, the offer expires exactly the time specified. In the absence of the statement, in absence of a statement time period, which is 24 hours or 48 hours or whatever, a reasonable time to accept an offer. Now, I want to do this because I'm just curious, and let me just switch over to Google. So what I typed in there, I says, in a court of law, I'm sorry, I'm just typing. All right. So what I put in there was in a court of law, my keyboard is sticking. In the court of law, what is considered a reasonable time? So let's see what they say. In a court of law, a reasonable time is a period of time that is considered fair and necessary to complete an action or payment, given the circumstances. It is a vague term that can be a source of litigation and often a question for a jury to decide. All right, they say here are some factors. Here are some factors that court consider when determining what is a reasonable time. Circumstances, the circumstances surrounding contract formation. Intent, the intent of the parties involved. Nature of the action being performed, buying a house, etc. Common customs, the common customs in business under the circumstances. I wouldn't be over a week and accepting an offer. Like a couple of days, honestly, to tell you the truth. Just to make sure that you don't have to go to court and prove reasonable time. Now that's going to come into play with acceptance of the offer, extending the offer, financing, or like say for instance, you said we're gonna have the sale closed by December 20th, and it's December 22nd, and the seller want to get out of the contract. Well, 2 days ain't a reasonable time. Most contracts have the language of on or before or on or around or something like that. Plus, here's the thing too. I get a lot of agents call me like, "Hey, this is what's going on. This ain't right. Yada, this, and that." And I say, "What you want to get out of contract?" They say, "Well, yeah, we in contract. We supposed to close. We supposed to close yesterday. Now they talking about they want to close in a week." So I asked them, I say, "Well, if you were to get out of the contract, how long is it going to take for you to close on that new contract that you're going to get? If you get one immediately, probably about 30 days, 40 days. So they asking for another week, and you about to invalidate that contract because they need another week and force your seller to get or your buyer to get into a situation where now they may have to be longer than 30 to 40 days. Sometimes the contention and stuff with this game is unreasonable. And when y'all get in the field, people gonna be looking at your license number, right? Like she knew. They might even be apprehensive about accepting the offer. That's why when you send your paperwork up over as a newer agent, you want to have all your T's crossed, I's dotted. But at the end of the day, when you're submitting the offer, you want to, like I said, that's the next step. And if you ever got any questions for me, call me. But I get a lot of questions like that where people get real contentious with this stuff. Keep everything diplomatic, and remember that you're this isn't for you. This is for somebody else. So let them make the decision. And then you just remind them in what I just said. The seller, I want to get out of, I want to get out of it right now. Put it back on the market. Well, if we put it back on the market, we get out of this offer. We may not get an offer immediately, and then it's going to take us 30 to 45 days to close on it. If we even got it if we get one tomorrow, it's going to take us 30 to 45 days to close, most likely. So you sure you don't want to give them in a week? Okay, all right, we're going to give them a week. Right. So that's kind of like the line of thinking when like a lot of times when I get calls, it'd be a lot of adversarial type of unnecessary conflict. I'm just trying to get my money, period. And I'm gonna do stuff smart. It's not smart to get out of, like, always ask yourself, is that smart? Like, they need another week. Well, why do you need another week? Well, the lender's screwing up. Well, you was a buyer's agent before you know lenders screw up. Right. So you really got to just really, it's all about building your business the way you want to conduct it. And the more adversarial or contentious you get, you're going to find it really hard out here because honestly, we're not realtors. We are deal makers and counselors, really, to tell you the truth. We make deals happen. I mean, we're called realtors, but you might have to piece some stuff together to get something done or get something closed. And you and the other agent have to do a dance to get to that finish line. And sometimes it ain't pretty, so just remember that. And another thing about this too, I'm going to say this because this is something that happened to me today. In this game, this is the one profession that everybody think they can do your job, period. People think that they can be an attorney. And then they get charged with practicing law without a license. But people really think that because you got all these YouTubers, all you got to do is buy a house, flip it, and all this stuff. It's so many mistakes that they make. And so the reason why I say that is if you don't have a client that's willing to listen to you, man, keep it moving. The squeeze is not worth the juice. Look, like I got a team of people. Y'all always going to be able to call me. You always think in your mind that I'm not an individual. I got a team of people. I got an appraiser that I can call. I got an attorney that I can call. My broker is there. Don't get out there and be on the island by yourself. Utilize your resources when you're out there practicing real estate, because just because like it's a lot of people gonna think that they're gonna be able to do your job, and they may be right in certain instances, but when it comes down to those nuances of the deal, I guarantee you they're not gonna be able to know as much as we are when it comes to how to traverse a real estate deal. So, but yeah, that's how curious y'all got to become when y'all studying this stuff, because I always wonder what reasonable time leaves in means in the legal realm, and what it means is vague, just as vague as what it sounds. It's left up to a determination of a court or a jury or somebody that you probably don't want to be dealing with. All right, so just make sure you're doing stuff smart. We were on, okay, so we were on 4, and the answer to that question is the buyer's death terminated the offer. I remember that question. That's number 4. It says a buyer submits an offer to a seller and then dies in a car accident. Before learning of the buyer's death, the seller accepts the offer. Which of the following is true? What terminates an offer? We need to remember what terminates an offer. If you don't know the 6 or 7 things that terminate an offer, just put them on a flashcard and study them. All right, we picked the buyer's death terminated the offer. Let's see why though. All right, so 4 says any of the following actions or circumstances can terminate an offer. Acceptance is no longer an offer, it's a contract. Rejection, nope, I'm good on it. I'm changing it. Revocation means I'm taking it completely off the table. Lapse of time, too much time passed, you didn't accept it. All right, counter offer, obviously you crossed out something and you changed it and sent it back over. That killed the offer. It's a new offer. Or death or insanity of either party. That terminated the offer. Number 5, we said a contract for selling undeveloped land. I remember that question too. And that question was, which of the following contracts can be assigned to another party? We said C, a contract for selling undeveloped land. That was the answer. And it reads number 5. It says a real estate contract is not a personal service. I'm sorry, a real estate contract that is not a personal contract for services can be assigned to another party. The key to that is not a contract for services. You can't assign a contract for services to another party unless the terms of the agreement specifically prohibits the assignment. Listing agreements, for example, are not assignable since they are personal service agreements between the agent and the principal. Sales contracts, however, are assignable because they involve the purchase of real property rather than a personal service. All right. Now, this is a definition question. This is that implied question. All right. It says 36. I'm sorry, this is question 6. The parties acted as if there was a contract. So the question that we were asked in 6, it says an implied agency relationship may be deemed to exist if B, the parties act as if there was a contract. All right. And then the question and the answer, the response to that is an implied contract is an unstated or unintentional agreement that may be deemed to exist when the actions of any of the parties suggest the existence of an agreement. That's a great definition for implied contract. It's a little long, but I would write that one down. This is all in that book too, by the way. All right. 37, we said a sale before closing. I remember that's the answer that we answered to that. And it says, which of the following is an executory contract? We put B, a sale contract before closing. Let's see what they said. Sales contract before closing. An executory contract is one in which performance is yet to be completed. A sales contract prior to closing and a sales contract prior to closing is executory. While the parties have agreed to buy and sell, the buyer has yet to pay the seller, and the seller has yet to deed the property to the buyer. All right. Number 8, it says both parties promise to do something in exchange for the other party's performance. Number 8, we said both parties promise to do something in exchange for the other party's performance. That's right. We got it right. So it says a bilateral contract is one in which both parties promise to perform their respective parts of an agreement in exchange for the performance by the other party. An example of a bilateral contract is an exclusive listing. The broker promises to exercise due diligence in the efforts to sell a property, and the seller promises to compensate the broker when and if the property sells. Number 9, All right, we said the broker may have a claim for marketing expenses expended during the listing term. I directly remember that one because that one said a seller signs a listing agreement with the broker, then subsequently revokes the listing. Which of the following is true? We said the broker may have a claim for marketing expenses expended during the listing term. All right, and the answer is, we said that the damaged party may elect the following legal remedies. Remedies: rescission, forfeiture, suit for damages, or suit for specific performance. However, the broker must show the seller has breached the contract. If that's not in the contract, you can't show them because you verbally agreed to that. So you gonna want to put something like that in the contract. What I typically do is I don't like, it's real easy to market a property for free now, unless you got a real exclusive property and you need to do something different, right? You need to like put it in a different type of you might need to put it on a, like if you were listing a commercial property, you might want to go to spend some money to get it in the MLS and also CoStar. All right. All right, so it says, let's see here. That one was that one. Okay, so number 10, the failure of a party to perform according to the terms of the contract. That was a definition question, which is breach. What is a breach of contract? We said a failure of a party to perform according to the terms of a contract. So we got that one right. Let's see what they say in the answer. A breach of contract is a failure to perform according to the terms of an agreement. That's the definition of breach. So 11 is the act of declaring that the contract is no longer in effect for a given party. All right, what do we put for number 11? What is rescission? Okay, we put the act of withdrawing the offer before it was accepted. And this is the one where I said I wanted to pay attention to this one. Because rescission, we just need to know the definition of rescission, and that is the definition. The act of declaring a contract is no longer in effect for a given party. That's rescission. All right. And we put the act of withdrawing before an offer is accepted. That's maybe revocation, but that's okay. We got that one wrong. That one was B. And here's why. The parties to a contract may rescind a contract by mutual consent, or a damaged party may rescind a contract unilaterally. If the act of rescission cancels the contract and returns both parties to their pre-contract condition, including the refunding of monies already transferred. I just don't like that question, though, to tell you the truth. Because it says the act of rescission cancels the contract and returns the part, not that part. I don't think they said anything about a party being damaged in a question. Had they said that, we would have probably gotten that one right. Let's see here. Rescission is that that's what they asked is, what is rescission? They didn't say anything about a party being damaged. If I'd have known that a party was damaged, then I might have thought something different. I don't like when they do that to us, because in the answer it says the parties to a contract may rescind a contract by mutual consent, or a damaged party may rescind a contract. They never said that the party was damaged to rescind a contract. So I just don't like that one. Whatever. We'll keep it moving. But all right. So number 12, it says a mutual understanding or agreement. All right. To be valid, a valid contract, and we put reflect a mutual understanding or agreement. And it says mutual consent, also known as offer and acceptance and meeting of the minds. This is when we all noticed that requires a contract involve a clear and definite offer and an intention and an intentional, unqualified acceptance of the offer. All right. Number 13, unenforceable. It says two parties into a contract. The agreement fulfills all the requirement for a valid contract with no disqualifying circumstances. Given the situation, it is still possible that the contract may be unenforceable. That's what we said. We had a long discussion about this one too. So a valid contract that is in writing is enforceable within a statutory time period. A valid contract that is made orally is also generally enforceable within the statutory period, with the exception that some contracts are enforceable only if they're in writing. These laws apply to a particular these laws apply in particular to the transfer and interest of real estate. A void or avoidable contract is not a truly valid contract. I don't like that explanation, but we're gonna keep it moving. All right, it says is possibly valid and enforceable. That was 44. All right, so let's see what the question of 14. The guardian for a mentally incompetent party enters into an oral contract with another party to buy a trade fixture on behalf of the incompetent party. This contract is possibly valid and enforceable. Now this might be the one that I put is valid but unenforceable. Let's see why. Let's see why. They said it says incompetent parties or parties of unsound mind may not enter into enforceable contracts. However, during the period of one's incompetency, the court may appoint a guardian who may act on the incompetent party's behalf with court approval. But you didn't tell us why it's possibly valid and enforceable. What was the answer that we selected? Yeah, these are the type of nuanced questions that I'm not going to really kill myself if we get them wrong, because they still leave it open and they're not explaining why it's possibly valid and enforceable. It's an oral contract. So I just disagree with that one. That's the third one that we got wrong out of the 20, but that's cool because we know we can get 6 wrong and we already on 14 to get 70. We don't want to get them more wrong though. All right. We said counter offer for 15. Let's see what 15 is on here. 15 says a counter offer. We got that one right. By changing any terms of an offer, the offeree creates a counter offer and the original offer is void. At this point, the offeree becomes the offerer and the new offeree gains the right of acceptance. If accepted, the counter offer becomes a valid contract providing all other requirements are met. For 16, we put valuable consideration. And that's what we put down here. A construction contractor executes a contract with a buyer. In the agreement, the contractor promises to complete construction by November 20th. This promise can be construed as valuable consideration, and we got that one right. And it says here, valuable consideration can be something of tangible value, such as money or something a party promises to do or not do. For example, a home builder may promise to build a house for a party as consideration for receiving money from the home buyer. All right, 17 we said is void. A seller contracts to sell a property that she does not own. The sales contract for this transaction we said transaction is void. We said void. And the answer to that one is void. The content, promise, or intent of a contract must be lawful. The contract that possesses an illegal act is void. That's good. All right, on that one, we said the answer is 48 is A within the statutory period. We looked that one up and we got that one right. I'm not going to read the answer to that one because that's statute of limitations. That's something that you just don't have to worry about. 19 is we said eliminate fraud in real estate contracts. Statute of fraud. All right. And this is another one. This one, we got this one wrong. This is one where I'm just like, okay, whatever. B, requires certain conveyance-related contracts be in writing. Statute of fraud requires that certain contracts must be in writing to be enforceable. Real estate contracts that convey an interest in real estate fall into this category, with the exception that a lease of 1 year's duration or less may be oral. So in this one, statute of frauds, this is just one we'll talk about a little bit more, but requires certain conveyance-related contracts. When they say conveyance-related contracts, that's the one that threw me off. Like, when you convey something, you give something to somebody, I see what whatever. And this one, if it says to be in writing, you want to look at any question that has. If they ask about statute of frauds and the answer has to be in writing, you really want to look hard at that one. All right. And then the last one that we answered, and we got that one right. So we missed 4. 2 of them were real vague. I wouldn't really be worried about it, but um, a seller immediately accepts a buyer's offer, but waits 10 days before returning the accepted document to the buyer. Meanwhile, the offer expired. Which of the following is true? The buyer has no obligations to the seller whatsoever. But why? It says the mutual consent required for a valid contract is reached through the process of offer and acceptance. If the offeree accepts all terms without an amendment, the offer becomes a contract. The exact point at which the offer becomes a contract is when the offeree gives the offeror notices of acceptance. All you got to do is give it notice of acceptance. If an offer contains an expiration date or the phrase time is of the essence, the offer expires exactly the time specified. So let me break out my calculator. We got 16 to 20, right? What percentage is that? We just want to be at 80%, which it is. 16 divided by 20 is 80%. So when you're taking a test, if you get 80%, that's good. You want to obviously get higher than 70%. But when you start getting 80%, 85% on some of these tests, then you're pretty solid in that. I want to get it up a little higher, but we're gonna ask some more contract questions. We'll let's answer like 5 more and then call it a night. We write it 9:30, so that's 2 hours. And let's take 5 of the unanswered questions, and they're going to tell us if we're right or wrong immediately. So this is contracts. I don't like that one. They ask us questions that has nothing really to do with contracts. So let me do this. Let me do 10, and then we'll skip 5, just in case we get some bad questions. Well, questions that that's not really related to it. All right, 5 of these we got to answer. If the seller informs a buyer 2 weeks before the closing date that they no longer wish to sell the property, what is the buyer's best course of action? Is it 1, wait until the closing date to take action? 2, immediately seek specific performance? 3, request the mutual cancellation of the contract? Or 4, negotiate a later closing date? I'm going to get rid of 4. Y'all get rid of 1. What y'all think? Get rid of 1. It says a seller informs, am I sharing? I'm sharing it. A seller informs a buyer 2 weeks before the closing date that they no longer wish to sell the property. What is the buyer's best course of action? Wait until the closing date to take action, immediately seek specific performance, request mutual cancellation of the contract. What do y'all think?
I guess you can get rid of A.
Okay. And that leaves immediately seek specific performance or request the mutual cancellation of the contract. Which one y'all think?
I think it's B.
I agree. All right. It says seeking specific performance is the correct course of action for the buyer in the scenario because it directly addresses the breach of the contract by the seller, who has indicated an unwillingness to proceed with the sale as agreed. The legal remedy compels the seller to complete the sale, thereby enforcing the terms of the original agreement. The uniqueness of the real estate as an asset class means that monetary compensation might not adequately remedy the buyer's situation, making specific performance more suitable and direct approach to ensure the buyer received the agreed upon property. All right, next question. All right, here we go. A 17-year-old homeowner wishes to sell their property and has entered into a contract with the buyer. What is the legal status of the contract? A 17-year-old homeowner wishes to sell the property and has entered into a contract with the buyer. What is the legal status of the contract? Is it voidable at the minor's option? Is it automatically void, enforceable as written, unenforceable due to minority? I'm going to get rid of automatically void.
Cancer has these searching possibilities. Discover Opdivo plus Yervoy, the first combination of 2 immunotherapies for adults newly diagnosed with non-small cell lung cancer that is spread tests positive for PD-L1,
Right.
abnormal EGFR.
Which I got rid of automatically void, and we
Get
need
rid of the last one, D.
unenforceable due to minority. All right, so that leaves us voidable at the minor's option, enforceable as written. The contract says a 17-year-old homeowner wishes to sell the property and has entered into a contract with a buyer. What is the legal status of the contract? Is it voidable at the minor's option, enforceable as written?
Enforceable as written. Let me see. 17.
Nope, we're going with that one. It's probably voidable at the minor's option. Why did you think enforceable as written?
I don't know. I really didn't think about it.
Well, the other thing too is that when you get a question like this, go through your things that make a contract valid, right? And so we know that in certain states, a minor can't enter into a contract, but they're not going to be bound to it, and it makes it voidable because they may actually want to go into a contract, get into a contract. But it's going to be voidable because they don't completely satisfy that tenant to, well, like I said, I don't want to get into it. Let's read what they say. But it's voidable at the minor's option. The contract in question being entered into by a 17-year-old homeowner is considered voidable at the minor's option. The legal status acknowledges that the legal status acknowledges the minor's limited capacity to fully grasp the implications of contractual agreements. The law provides minors with the right to disaffirm or void contracts to protect their interests, allowing them to either fulfill the contract terms or void the contract until they reach the age of majority or a reasonable time thereafter. This protection is crucial as it shields minors from being unfairly bound to by agreements that they may not fully understand or may not be in their best interest. All right, that's cool. Let's remember that. We get them wrong here, definitely. So it says, what can a buyer legally pursue if the seller breaches the real estate sales contract? What can a buyer legally pursue if the seller breaches a real estate sales contract? Immediate property ownership. 2, a full refund of earnest money. 3, specific performance to complete the sale. Or 4, a penalty fee from the seller. What can a buyer legally pursue if the seller breaches the real estate sales contract? Remember what I told you about if you see something in these types of questions, this is what you should be thinking. So I'm going to get rid of immediate property ownership.
They will get a full refund of the earnest money, right? Because it was a breach.
When a buyer legally pursue, okay, what can a buyer legally pursue? Yeah, so what do you want to eliminate that?
No, I don't.
Or you want to keep it? Okay, let's eliminate one more.
Um, let's eliminate specific performance to complete the sale.
No, that's the answer.
Is it?
That's the answer. When you hear legally pursue, you got to connect those two. Seller breached, What are the remedies to that buyer legally? Refund the earnest money is an illegal remedy, right? When one party breaches, they definitely not gonna get the earnest money, not especially if the breaching party is the seller.
So they have to so they can still purchase the property.
Right, because here's the thing. You agree to sell me your property. I did everything you asked me to sell it, and then you back out. Now, here it is, 10 other properties that I liked and sold. I'd have missed out on all of that. I'm gonna have to take you to court to tell the court to make you complete your it's easier for me to, as the buyer, to take you to court to make the court compel you to sell the property than it is for you to take me to court and make the court make me buy the property. Because there's a bunch of buyers, like it's only one of your house, but there's a bunch of buyers out there that could buy your house. So anytime you hear what can a buyer legally, this is a legal remedy. The full refund of earnest money is not a legal remedy. I mean, you might have to go through some type of arbitration or something like that to get the earnings money back. But if I'm left down to specific performance in this, I'm for this type of question, I'm gonna pick this one. This is the answer. All right, and then but 22% of the people, the full refund of the earnest money was the answer. But let's read why. Specific performance to complete the sale is a legal remedy that compels the seller to proceed with the sale of the property as per the terms outlined in the contract. Study specific performance and remedies if someone breaches. All right. This remedy is particularly sought after in real estate transactions due to the unique nature of real property. No two properties are exactly alike, and monetary damages may not always be sufficient to compensate the buyer for the loss of a specific property. The court may order specific performance when it deemed that monetary compensation is inadequate and that the contract terms can be precisely fulfilled. The remedy hinges on the principle that real estate is unique and that the buyer entered into a contract with the expectations of acquiring that specific property. All right. So that's 3 questions, of which we got 2 wrong. So we're not going to get 70 on these. This is all good, though. We're going to skip that. That's not really a contract question. Let's get an easy one here real quick. Electronic signatures on real estate contracts are 1, only valid with a witness. 2, generally considered valid. 3, not recognized legally. 4, valid only for leases. I'm going to get rid of valid only for leases. We need to get rid of one more.
A.
That's what I was gonna say, A.
All right, so generally considered valid, not recognized legally. What do y'all think?
I say it's B.
Yep, generally
B.
considered valid. All right, and it says electronic signatures are correctly identified as generally considered valid for real estate contracts. This validity stems from legal recognition and acceptance of electronic signatures under laws like e-Sign Act and the Uniform Electronic Transactions Act, UTA. Yeah, I guess that's what we're gonna call it. These laws confirm that electronic signatures carry the same weight as traditional signatures, making them enforceable for a wide range of transactions, including the buying, selling, and leasing property. The key factor is that all parties of the transaction must agree to use electronic signatures, and the electronic signature process must be executed in a manner that securely associates the signature with the document being signed. This ensures that the electronic signature are not only convenient but are also legally binding. Let's answer one more. All right. If a seller breaches a real estate contract by failing to disclose known facts, what is the most appropriate remedy for the buyer? 1, renegotiate contract terms. 2, seek damages for non-disclosure. 3, request a reduction in the sales price. 4, proceed with the seller's plan. I'm gonna get rid of 4. I'm not gonna proceed with the seller's plan. All right. get rid of one more, and this is the last question of the night.
Get rid of B.
Get rid of B or D?
B. You already got rid of D.
Okay. All right. So we just got rid of the answer.
What?
Yeah. So if a seller breaches the real estate contract by failing to disclose known defects, that's a big breach. Like you're hiding something. It's
I
fraud.
misinterpreted the question.
Yeah, it's fraud, right? So it could be
So
intentional.
the contract was already signed, already done, and the buyer found defects.
Right, through probably their inspection. Right?
Got you. Right.
Like they like you can tell when somebody has something like scooting a couch over in front of something. They knew that wall was leaking at the bottom, or something was going on. They didn't think the inspector was going to come in there and find it, but this is the answer right here.
Yeah, I misconstrued the question.
That's all good. We got to do that here, not on the test. Seek damages for non-disclosure is the most appropriate remedy for the buyer in the scenario because it directly addresses the harm caused by the seller's breach of contract. Damages are a monetary compensation awarded to the injured party for the loss of or injury suffered due to the breach of contract. In the context of the non-disclosure of defects in a real estate transaction, damages would compensate the buyer for the difference between the value of the property as represented and actual value considering the undisclosed defect. This remedy is designed to put the injured party in a position they would have been in had the contract been fully honored, making it a direct and effective response to the seller's failure to disclose. All right, and that's it. All right, so this has been recorded. Overall, there were some technical questions in here. There was a lot of good questions though. So, we will start on agency. I'm going to do a couple definition videos for agency tomorrow. I'll post those. This will be available first thing tomorrow. So